All right, Laura, so excited to get to chat and talk shop. We both work in the marketing space. I think you started your company in 1999, which is a really key time because to me, I look at 99, 2000 as this real window where I remember just coming out of school and it was this wild time where everybody's talking about brick and mortar.com. The world's about to change. The internet's here. There was so much hype, there was so much that was going on. And so you have been, hard at it, like 27 years building. There are a number of things you've written books. You've got, this tool, I think, the circle of traction. You're looking at all these tools rapidly shifting again in another, this era of time they're in with AI acceleration. So I would love to first hear about, yourself, the company that you've built, and then from there, let's get into some of what more recently you've been working on.
I would love that, Caleb. And thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation. And you were right. 1999 was a wild time. It was the wild, wild west of the internet. Something we all live with today as though it's ubiquitous. It's like a utility. But back then it was kind of a new frontier.
True. So what has it been like for you over the last number of years? You've seen the tools change. What specifically are you seeing right now that you're most excited about?
Well, obviously, you can't go anywhere today without having a conversation about AI. You can't even go to the gas station in Austin without having a conversation about AI. But I think it's important to kind of wind the clock back just a little bit so we can have some context. In 1999 in Austin, Texas, if you could spell marketing, you could get a job here. We had all kinds of companies just popping up like mushrooms as a result of Semitech and MCC and just all kinds of startups. So it was a very interesting time to be in Austin, to be in marketing, to be in technology. I've been here 44 years. I came here to work for a little company people might be familiar with called Motorola in the semiconductor space, specifically in microcontrollers. So my background was in technology before I came, and it's been pretty much in manufacturing and technology since. So just to give some context. And the thing that I always like to tell people is when we started VisionEdge Marketing, we really started with the idea that marketing is an engine of growth. So it's all about growth. And that two primary principles that our company was founded on is Peter Drucker's principle that the purpose of business is to create a customer, and Phil Kotler's principle on marketing that the purpose of marketing or the job of marketing is find, keep, and grow profitable customers. So for us, it's always been about customer centricity and customer-centric growth. And how do you do that? What processes do you need? What decisions and what data do you need to make better decisions, smarter decisions, and how do you measure the success of what you're doing? So does that provide some context?
So you mentioned the manufacturing space. So would you say that the majority of your work with your company has been more on the manufacturing or the enterprise side of things than, say, small or medium-sized businesses?
Well, we certainly have evolved. Early on in 1999, we worked with a lot of startup companies because that's awesome. Just like I said, we were blessed. But then something happened in 2001. In addition to 9/11, the other thing that happened was the dot-com bust. And we really had to think differently about our customers, what we were providing, the services that we could bring to the table, the conversations we needed to have. So our customers are all B2B companies and always have been. That's really our area of expertise, and predominantly in manufacturing, technology, life science, bioscience, medical devices, financial services on the B2B front, and logistics and supply chain. Those are our primary and have been our primary markets since we started, and we have roots there. All of the people that are a part of VisionEdge Marketing have roots in those industries. We came from those industries. We understood those industries. And people that are in those companies want to know that the people they're working with have some domain expertise. So we kind of have stuck in the lanes that we can bring value.
So where do you see the focus right now with where you guys are working? Certainly we went from 99, the yellow pages was still this heavy hitter, and then it sort of stepped into the digital space. I'm not making assumptions about what the leadership team or what the team was thinking there, but I think that at a certain point you feel almost too big to fail. Certainly when that you have legacy technology and emerging technology overlap, there's change. But I'm curious to know how are you serving your clients right now?
It's a great question, and you're exactly right, Caleb. You really kind of hit the target right in the bullseye. And what we have noticed over the last couple of decades is an interesting shift of what I would call companies have gotten to a point where there's a tremendous amount of effort and a tremendous amount of activity, regardless of their size. And they're trying to make decisions every day rapidly, make rapid decisions. And so it's consuming a lot of time, it consumes a lot of energy, but a lot of it is very random. There's just a lot of random stuff going on in business today. And many of the things that leaders are doing, they're not really connected to things that matter to the customer that will create business value. Because if you don't create customer value, you can't create business value, right? That kind of goes back to our roots. Those same principles still apply today, 27 years later. So as a result of what we've seen from all of the research that we have been doing, we've worked with over 300 organizations, probably more than that. I kind of stopped counting when we got into those kinds of numbers, couldn't keep track. And I'm pretty convinced, I think that companies don't have an execution problem. I think people have been focused on the execution problem for a long time. We did too. I don't think it's an execution problem anymore. I think it's a strategic clarity and an alignment problem. And they're doing so much. And maybe you see this as well. You talk to a lot of people. You work with a lot of companies. Are you seeing that people are just inundated with activity? They're measuring just about everything that they can possibly measure. So the number of measures are just overwhelming. And they're pursuing a bunch of priorities that don't really have anything to do with moving the ball down the field, as we say in Texas, right? So are you seeing that as well? Because that's kind of what we're seeing.
Yeah, I would say certainly the moment AI entered the chat and became this infinite extension to anyone's ideas, what happened was people then had a over acceleration of opportunity. And so in a way, if you think of a financial currency, if a central bank prints and just hits money printer, go brrr, and starts flooding the market with 100 or 1,000x of what was there, that value of that $1 is no longer $1, it is the equivalent of 100 or $1,000. And what's happened with content or with strategy or ideas or brainstorming or tactics is what before might take let's say a 1 hour unit of energy to get to, let's say, one strategy or one tactic. Now within that 1 hour, you could have 100 or 1,000 tactics. And then people are going to others saying, okay, here's our plan. Let's do it. So you have two things happening. You mentioned the clarity, which I think if you have such an overabundance, that value is deflated compared to what it was before. The currency of it is no longer holds the same value. But then you also have this dilution of execution, because now you have many projects that are half created, tactics that are half executed, or a tactic or a project that was launched by some part of the team or company. And then what's happened is it's sort of orphaned out there or left and partially built, almost like you would see an infrastructure build, could be a company or a house, could be a subdivision of houses that gets partially built and it's not finished. And so I think a lot of the strategies, the tactics are partially there because they have the appearance, almost the ghost of intelligence and strategy, because it has come from like a large language model that's trained on real strategy. But when it actually came to people that understand it and are executing and seeing it through, it doesn't have the follow through or the soul or the care, if you will, to actually see those things. So in that sense, I 100% agree with you in the sense that I think in some respects, less is more, but less, not just less for the sake of less, it has to be less focused on the most important. So the tree, in all the ways that it naturally will expand out, needs to be pruned down in the right way to then push the whatever units of energy are available in that team or company to produce as much and as high of quality of fruit or production value as possible.
You hit the nail right on the head. We're exactly on the same page. And I want to come back to this idea or this word that you used, orphan. I want to come back to that in a moment because I agree with you. You know, AI is helping us do a lot of things faster, but to your point and to what we're seeing, it's just a lot of the wrong things faster, right? So we can execute faster with AI, and we can automate more with AI, and we're all doing it. You know, it's just like making websites back. So I think back to the first website we created, which was a hard-coded 2-page website. It cost $25,000, and we could do absolutely no changes to it. And then it evolved, right? And today we can make changes to our website. We can put up a website quickly. We can do all kinds of things. We just have to know what the right things are to do in order to make it resonate and relevant to the people that are coming to our website. So if we are not clear about what matters, then AI is not going to help us be successful. We have to have that clarity. And that takes us to the point you made about orphans. So we have a little random acts test. I'll have to find the link for you and I'll share it with you later. But we have a little test. Take all of the things you're doing and put them on Post-it notes. And then make sure you have all your strategies and what you're trying to accomplish on a whiteboard or wherever it is where you can see it. Now see how many of the little Post-it notes that you have or all the things you're doing fit in what kind of structure to support those strategies in order to achieve the outcomes for your company. And it's amazing how many of those Post-it notes are orphans. They don't go anywhere on the board, right? So those are random acts. And that's really what we are focused on now, because CEOs of large and mid-market and even small companies, although I find that less in the startups, but definitely mid-market and larger, and those leadership teams that are supporting them and the boards that they are working with, they create these intentional customer-centric strategies. They're very intentional. They go through major strategic planning. You've probably participated in some of those efforts or initiatives, right? They're trying to really get clear on what is sort of that mutual value. They try to get their organization mobilized and aligned around all of that. And they try to make sure the strategy and decisions and execution and measurement are all reinforcing each other. But then it begins to unravel. And we are trying to make sure that it doesn't unravel and give them the tools and processes for that.
So who, if they were to find you today, would be your ideal company or person to help? And at what stage, what problem is it that right now someone is trying to figure out that they might not know it, but they're looking for you?
They're looking for someone. We do best, I'll just say, we do best and are more successful and helpful to companies who are really finding themselves overwhelmed with activity. So they're doing a lot of stuff, but they don't have alignment around what actually creates value. That's a key problem they have. So they're busy, busy, busy. And you know that old saying, Caleb, have you ever heard this old saying, I'm too busy chopping wood to sharpen my axe? They're in that mode. And so what we want to do is help them get out of that place. And to do that, to be more customer centric, to really get focused on the things that are going to create that value, and to make the decisions that are going to help them grow. And I'm going to come back to your tree metaphor. That's not marketing. So we are not looking to work with marketing people, because marketing people have been sucked into the random acts vortex, right? With all the things they can do with AI. And so what we want is really focusing on leadership and growth discipline. So it's really about growth governance. I think to your point, AI does not solve the clarity problem. AI will not do that for you. That's going to take your leadership and really solid, hard thinking. In fact, if you don't have good clarity, it will just amplify that you don't have good clarity. You can amplify it once you have it. So you said something very interesting about the tree and pruning the tree. Have you ever read the book Necessary Endings by Henry McLeod? Okay. It is a great book. And for the people who are listening, I hope you will check it out. It's called Necessary Endings. And I love the metaphor he uses about the rose bush and pruning of the rose bush. Would you like me to kind of share it with you, or shall I leave it as a
Sure.
teaser?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, it's not my book, but I love this book. I have other books I love too, but I think this is a great book. So imagine, for those of us who are gardeners, are you a gardener, Caleb?
I do love our garden. Yep.
Okay, I love gardening too. And so imagine, for those of us who do like to play in the dirt, we have created this beautiful space in our yard, and we are going to put a rose bush in one of in the main, as the main feature in this space. And we can see that this is going to be a magnificent rose bush when it comes to fruition. So we go to the nursery, we get our little baby rose bush, we bring it home, we put it in the ground, we give it all the right dirt, we tend to it, we do all kinds of great things, and it begins to grow. And in our mind, we can see that it's going to be magnificent. But things have to be done to keep a rose bush healthy and enable it to become that magnificent vision. You have to prune things that are dead off of it, right? Because you don't want to have the dead things sucking energy from the live things. And sometimes, in order to achieve the vision of the rose bush that you have in your mind, you have to even prune good pieces off of the tree, off of the bush, to, again, put the energy in where you need it to go. You might even take off beautiful buds in order to give the buds that are growing more energy. So if you think of the rosebush concept, which is what he has in this book, as your company, then to your point that you made earlier about pruning, for those of us who are working inside companies and responsible for strategy, which would be the CEO, maybe the chief strategy officer, maybe the chief growth officer, members of the board, we want to be thinking about, if it's not creating customer value, it should be pruned. If it's creating some customer value, but taking away from other places where you could create more customer value, you should prune it. You only want to hold on to the things that are creating customer value that is also creating large business value. That's sort of the message. And that's really what we try to get the people we work with to think about. What does that mean? How does that look? And how do you avoid having those random acts of marketing, selling, service, product, right, that happen, which are those little things on your rose bush that just don't really enable it to achieve the vision that you have.
So what tools or resources would you direct people to on your website or LinkedIn? How can they, hear more of this from you, or I guess get into your world and experience more of your guidance?
I would love for them to come into my world. Thank you, Caleb, for asking. So yes, you can go to my LinkedIn, Laura Patterson. I think if you type in my name, I'm one of the first ones to come up. I am the president of VisionEdge Marketing, in case your team is looking for, and founder, looking for a company name. My personal website, I'd love for them to come, because we talk a lot about random acts on my personal website, because it's a personal passion of mine to help companies replace those random acts with deliberate, intentional, customer-centric growth strategies at laurapatterson.co. and there's a lot of content there, and of course, VisionEdge Marketing website as well. So thank you for asking about that. I think if I could leave people with a thought, as we all think about the future, AI is certainly changing our perception and perspective about the future. It is not going to belong to the companies who can do the most. I think that's where we are today. People are just doing so much. It's not going to belong to the people who can do the most. It's going to belong to the companies that are the most intentional about what deserves to be done, right? And I think that resonates with what you were saying earlier.
Very cool. Well, final question, and I've been asking everybody I've been chatting with recently, if you had to pick one thing that you would say is what you need most to grow right now, it doesn't have to be financially, but often that's a metric that people are looking at for growth. What would you say the one thing is?
I would say create customer-centric strategies for growth. We keep in mind what it takes to create customer value. If you create the customer value, the business value will come, and so will the growth.
Awesome. Well, Laura, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Caleb.